to focus on building more schools, improve our educational system, and switch where the money's spent. So I am for changing the mass incarceration system. We have Cynthia Beverly that's been involved in some of this mass incarceration and trying to change things. My wife used to speak with death row inmates and seeing some of the different problems that exist in prisons. So I'm for modifying some of the drug laws and some of the 3 strikes laws. Some of the things that, when I was clerking for a local judge, that would be considered a strike is insane. Stealing a candy bar might get somebody a 3rd strike. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm for modifying things.
Yeah, when I was working for a federal judge, we saw about 50% of our cases were immigration cases or criminal sentencing cases, because on the federal level, we have some really draconian mandatory minimum guidelines where the judge is required to impose certain really strict penalties, really strict sentences, regardless of the surrounding circumstances. And it gives too much discretion to the prosecutor in terms of overcharging and really putting people in a bind when they have to decide whether to accept a plea bargain or not. And so we need to start taking steps against this really harmful practice that is hitting our African American and Latino communities disproportionately hard. It is taking too many people away from their families, away from their homes, and out of the economy. And so in building an economy that works for everyone, we need to have criminal justice reform as a key part of that.
Where do you stand on education, especially community college, for undocumented residents?
We need to invest more in education, as discussed by the other candidates up here, and I agree with that. Since 2011, federal funding of education has gone down 20%. I think that's outrageous. We need to be putting more investment into our schools, all the way up through community college, with vocational training, with apprenticeship and internship programs, making sure that everyone who lives in our community, all people who live in our community, have an opportunity to participate in our schools and then in our economy, so we're all moving forward together.
We have a local situation where this is extremely pertinent. Over in Santa Clarita, we have something called a Level E or Schedule E bond. And we have a gentleman by the name of Steve Petzl, who's really been trying to hold the College of the Canyons accountable for raising millions of dollars for a university or a community college that has a whole bunch of individuals that are coming from outside the area. Well, one of the things that you might want to look at is the more education you have, the less likely you're going to be involved in crime. There's that statistic. Would we rather spend money on criminal activity or incarceration? Absolutely not. Am I for moving individuals in Antelope Valley and College of the Canyons where local residents would have preferential treatment rather than undocumented aliens? For sure. So I'm for them being able to have education, but I don't want them to have classes in preference to our local residents. Thank you very much.
I certainly support community colleges. I'd like to see people be able to go to community college for free. We need to have, you can go to high school 12th grade, we need to have 14th grade. That can be paid for by reinstituting the estate tax. However, Congressman Knight voted against the estate tax or re-implementing the estate tax when not a single estate in the 25th district would have been impacted by it. So it makes you wonder maybe who he's representing. I think it's short-sighted to not allow people that aren't necessarily have citizenship status to go to college. We want and we need these people to be, they're here, we need them as part of our economy, we need them to have an education, we need them to have opportunities. We can't, just basically discriminate against them. It's bad for them and it's bad for us as a whole. So I would support allowing anybody that wants to go to community college to go to community college.
Do you agree with Senator Harry Reid that Clive Bundy and militia supporters are domestic terrorists?
Good question. Who asked that? All right. Yeah, I do think we throw that word terrorist around a little too loosely right now, but I think it does fit in this particular case. That's not how we address our grievances in this country. We have a system, and we have two lawyers up here that can tell you that we do it in court and not through guns and violence and so forth. If they have an issue, this is America. They're allowed to express it, to speak up on it, to have their position heard, but not through violence, not with guns.
I personally see the Bundys as heroes. And think about it from a standpoint, not the fact that he refused, there's a problem in him not paying his grazing fees. So there's one aspect of it. But the fact that the federal government started becoming more restrictive, and then Harry Reid having property right next door and wanting to sell his rights off to foreign entities, I think that's problematic. The same thing as his son, Amon Bundy, being held with minimal food and improper treatment without the rights to proper legal counsel. I think that if we look at this from a historic standpoint, they're more heroes than they are terrorists. They happen to be able to be bringing light to some federal overreaching, and that's one of my issues, is the BLM has been involved with them, and in some cases, in Amon Bundy's situation, it was for the Clintons to be able to sell property to China, and in the other Bundy in Nevada, it was so Harry Reid could sell his property and his mining rights to another foreign entity. So I think that there's some misuse of federal power, and I want to restrain the BLM. So again, I see them as heroes.
I strongly disagree with the tactics that they use. There is a proper way to voice your opposition to government conduct one way or the other, and I don't think they exercised it appropriately. But when we're talking about terrorists and terrorism, we need to focus on the people who are actually causing the greatest threat to our society right now. I believe that ISIS is the greatest threat that we are facing, and I believe we saw that all too recently in San Bernardino, what can happen in our communities regardless of what we are doing overseas. And so we need to make sure that we are vigilant about protecting ourselves against the terrorists at home who could strike, and that's one reason why I so firmly believe we need to make sure that people on the terrorism watch list cannot purchase guns in our community.
This is actually a question that's a follow-up to one of your statements earlier on, or all three of your statements earlier on. Why do you not feel that climate change is a top 3 American challenge?
Climate change is a hugely important issue, and we need to be doing everything we can to confront it. And California has taken some good steps in that direction. Unfortunately, as we all saw in our community with the Porter Ranch gas leak, millions of cubic tons of methane gas were released and erased a whole lot of the good hard work that we have done over the last few years in trying to combat climate change. And so we need to double down on our efforts, making sure that leaks like that don't happen again, which is why I propose strong federal regulations and oversight over the 400 natural gas facilities like Aliso Canyon. And it's also why we need to start investing more in green infrastructure and technology here. We've got a lot of space, a lot of land here in this community where we can be a real leader in moving forward, not only combating climate change, which is critically important, but building those great jobs here in our community to move forward.
Now, I love to see the people that talk about climate change. Now, do you like paying extra money for everything that you purchase in California for having California EPA regulations?
Yes.
I have a vehicle that, there are vehicles that are out here that are only good in California. They're good in 49 states, they're not good in California. The problem that we're having right now is California is the leader in EPA regulations, but in some cases we have regulations that don't make any sense. We have the regulations regarding our blended fuel. We have it codified that we have to blend the fuel a certain way, and we find out that it in fact enhances smog. What an idiotic rule. We have a situation where we have smog that comes in from China and Japan and India. It would make more sense to put trade barriers on China, Japan, and India, trying to get them to be halfway compliant rather than trying to have the cleanest air. I represent some individuals that work in NASA and are involved in traveling to different countries daily. And one of the things they say is kind of humorous is that we happen to be on the front line for the smog that's blowing in from Asia.
And time's up.
I absolutely applaud whoever asked that question, because you're absolutely right. That probably should be one of the top three. It's definitely one of my major concerns, but 3 in 1 minute, climate change takes quite a bit of time to discuss. So I encourage you to go to my website if you want more information on my position on that. But to talk about it specifically, it's an important national defense issue. I think the military has said climate change is a huge issue. And with our ports and with our naval bases, we need to address it. We need a national mandate for renewable energy. We need a national mandate to get away from carbon emissions. I think California 2020 is going to be the last fired coal plant is going to go offline. We need to have use California as an example for the rest of the country to follow. We need to have federal grants for people that, have put out high efficiency appliances or do green building with insulation, so we stop using so much energy. The earth is a finite resource, and absolutely climate change is something that I will work to address as your congressman.
Do you support federal food labeling laws so that people would know if GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are in their food?
Of course, and it seems almost comical to me that someone would not want you to know what you're eating. I mean, it just seems totally counterintuitive. So that makes me want it even more and be more adamant that we have labels on our food so that we know what we're eating. It's what we put in our body. I think we all learned in kindergarten, you are what you eat. And it's the most important thing we do to be healthy. There's no sense in being healthy and raising a family if you're going to have some kind of foreign substance or something you don't understand in your body that we don't fully understand the impacts of. So I definitely support the labeling of foods and GMOs.
We agree. There's another one. Unfortunately, products like Roundup, which are a variation of the Agent Orange, are used in harvesting some